Good.
Good. Y'all standing here by the fire to get warm, huh? You've already been out doing chores and it is
Cold.
cold. Hello everyone, welcome back to the homestead and welcome to another What We Eat in a Day video. I am out in our addition right now. Thankfully we had the rocket mask going last night, so it's pretty warm in here, but it is cold outside. This has been a really cold February for us so far, and I am so looking forward to spring. Before I get to the menu, I would like to just say thank you so much to all those who gave suggestions on what color we should paint the wall in our kitchen. We really appreciate those who contributed ideas for us, and I think we've figured out what we're gonna do. So once that's complete, we'll get to share that with you on a video in the future. So in this video, I'm gonna highlight just a few ways that I like to use leftovers. We just a few days ago had a roast turkey dinner. Sometimes Kip will get a whole turkey instead of a whole chicken if the price is better on a turkey, and we just all really love turkey. So the evening before the menu that I'm going to share with you today, we had that roast turkey, and I had made mashed potatoes and some veggies to go along with. And I ended up just leaving all the leftover mashed potatoes in the pot. I stuck it in our freezer overnight, and the next morning I made it into a really simple meal. We had mashed potato bake, you could call it egg bake, make up a name for it. It was basically about 6 cups of leftover mashed potatoes still in the same pot. I added 6 duck eggs and 3 chicken eggs. Duck eggs do equal a little bit more than 1 chicken egg, so if you're using all chicken eggs, you may need to use more for this recipe. And then I had some leftover turkey that I just kind of diced up and put in the same pot. We don't really have a lot of extra greens in the garden right now. I can't harvest every day because everything's just really slowed down growing out there. So I keep some kale powder on hand, and it's from the Synergy company, one of our favorite supplement companies. So I just sprinkled in some of that kale powder to give us a little bit of that green nutrition. And then I added some salt, garlic, and ground rosemary. And just mixed it all up right in the pot. And then I buttered a baking dish, poured it all into the baking dish, and then baked it just until the center was firm. And for those of you with a regular oven, that's probably about 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And it will probably take about 40 minutes is my guess. It usually takes a lot longer in our cook stove for something like that. And then we just served it up with some salsa for those who wanted salsa, sauerkraut, and then also some sour cream. So I just kind of let everyone choose what they wanted to top the bake with. And that was breakfast. So for lunch, I had some butternut squash from our garden, and then also sweet potatoes from the garden, and I kind of just cut up a whole bunch of it, put it in a big pot, and low boiled it. And this was the night before. Then once they were all cooked, I strained the water off and mashed it all up. It ended up being about 6 cups worth of mashed up and cooked sweet potato and butternut squash, all mixed together. And then I added to that a couple tablespoons of butter, a dash of salt, some ground cinnamon, ground ginger, and honey to taste. So I did all that the day before. Stuck that pot in our freezer as well. So then the next day for lunch, it was really easy to make a sweet potato pie or squash pie for lunch. I pulled that pot out in the morning so that by lunchtime it was all soft and ready to go, and I just added 9 eggs to that pot, mixed it all up. I decided to make a crustless pie. Sometimes I'll make a crust and sometimes I won't. In this case I did no crust. Spread the whole thing into a buttered stainless steel baking container, and then just like the egg bake, you probably want to bake it at about 350 and just until the center is firm. So for me and my cook stove, it took over an hour to bake that. But I'm really thankful for the cook stove, even though it takes longer to bake things. I'm super thankful for it. I love cooking on a cook stove. It's a huge blessing. All right, so then once that was done, I gave everyone the option to either have some applesauce or some what I call sweet sour cream on top. And that's just a little bit of honey added to sour cream. I call it sweet sour cream. Most everyone wanted both the applesauce and the sweet sour cream on top. So that made just a really quick, easy lunch using kind of leftovers. Some of us did eat a little bit of the mashed sweet potatoes and butternut squash the day before, but not everyone's a huge fan of it in that form. Everyone prefers the prefers that it's made into a pie. But it just made it easier for me to cook everything the day before, so then I had plenty of time to bake it for lunch the next day. Okay, then moving on to dinner. Dinner was super simple. Again, I used leftovers. I used the broth from the turkey, which I had just left on our cook stove overnight and through the day. I strained the broth just using a funnel and a strainer, and I usually put it into a jar first. You have to be careful that it's not too hot and go slow if you're pouring into a glass jar. But the reason I put it into a jar is because I wasn't sure if I was going to use it all and need to freeze some of it. I did end up using most of the broth, but there was some left in the end that I put in the freezer to add to a soup another day. So to that broth, I had already added salt, rosemary, and thyme when I roasted the turkey. So the broth was already very flavorful. So then for the soup, all I really needed to do was add a little bit of veggies and some of the leftover meat. So I started by cutting up a bunch of carrots and onion, put it in a pot. And then I added the broth to that and let that simmer for a while. You could also add celery. I was out of celery, but celery is good to add to this particular soup. Any vegetables really that you enjoy could go in any soup, in my opinion. So once the onions and carrots were softened and cooked well, I added some more leftover turkey meat that I had just chopped up. I decided to make this into a turkey noodle soup because I had some leftover Einkorn noodles from a previous meal, also in the freezer. So I had just pulled those out to defrost a little bit, and I did not put the noodles in until the very end, after everything else was good and cooked. I didn't want the noodles to get too mushy, they were already cooked. So that was supper, turkey noodle soup. Mostly from leftovers. I've found that with my family, soup goes over much better if there's something else along with it. So earlier in the day, I mixed up some of my sourdough einkorn starter in a bowl, and I decided to make some biscuits with that to go along with the soup. So for the biscuits, it was about 3 cups of sourdough einkorn starter that was very active and bubbly by the time I decided to make biscuits out of it. Probably had been going for about 5 hours. I added to that 1/2 cup of softened butter, a 1/4 cup of honey. These are all approximate measurements, by the way. 2 cups of arrowroot flour, 2 cups of almond flour, about a 1/2 tablespoon of salt, and a 1/2 tablespoon of baking soda. So I had a little helper help me mix that all up. I did not have to add any water. Sometimes water is needed, sometimes not. In this case, the batter was still pretty moist. Didn't need any more water. I dumped it all onto my baking stone. I use a circular pizza baking stone. Kind of just pressed it all down with my hand to about a 1/2 inch thickness. And then I used my pizza cutter to just quickly cut some lines in it to make it easier to serve up later. And then I just baked those in my cook stove. I'm not sure the temperature, probably for biscuits it's somewhere around 375 is my guess, until they were a little bit golden brown on top and they were ready to serve. I like to melt a little bit of butter and add some raw honey, mix it all up, and makes it super easy for people to just add a little bit of that to their biscuit. And that's what we had with our turkey noodle soup for dinner. So that was about it for our February day meals. A few ideas on how to use leftovers. I don't like anything to go to waste, so I'm always looking for ways to use those leftovers. All right, so I think that's it. Thanks again for those who contributed ideas on paint colors for kitchen wall. Thank you guys as always for watching. We really appreciate you being a part of our journey here on the homestead. And thank you to all those who are watching our children's channel, Thousands of Roots. That was our original channel. We really appreciate you guys sticking with us over there and with the children. They're getting really close to completely running that channel by themselves. I've been training them to do the editing and various other parts of keeping the channel going. It looks like they're really going to be able to continue that channel, and so thank you for sticking with us over there. Until next time, I pray blessings over you and yours, and whatever you do, do it with your whole heart.
You're like, not by the camera. I won't do it by the camera. I'll catch you. Catch you. Oh, you almost got it. Try it. Get ready. Catch. Oh, go close. Get ready. Oh, I almost got it. You ready? Catch. Oh, you almost got it.